and welcome to NDI. I'm Michelle Pini, and I'm joined today by Chris Hedges, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, Presbyterian minister, and author. He is the former head of the New York Times Middle East Bureau and publisher of the Chris Hedges Report. Chris Hedges, welcome to NDI.
Thanks, Michelle.
I thought we might go firstly to the horrific Bondi massacre, where 16 people are now dead and 40 injured. And I believe that, in terms of the war in Gaza at the moment, of course, this is a very significant issue. A lot of people are, I guess, chiming in and speaking up about this and its significance on anti-Semitism and all of those things. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's blowback. So you've had over 2 years of genocide. Before this ceasefire, it's not really much of a ceasefire. Over 300 Palestinians have been killed, hundreds more injured. Anywhere between 6 to 20 a day are killed during the quote unquote ceasefire. The second day of the ceasefire, 150 Palestinians were killed. I've spent a lot of time in the Muslim world, in the Arab world in particular, since October 7th, long trips to Egypt, Qatar, 2 trips to Qatar. I was in Jordan, the West Bank, and there is a very understandable rage on the part of the Arab world that not only are Western nations, including Australia, of course, which provides parts for F-35s, not halting this genocide, but they are sustaining it. In particular, the United States, with over $22 billion worth of weapons since October 7th, but not just the United States, the UK, Germany is a major arms supplier, even though there's been a rhetorical shift with countries like Australia and the UK recognizing a Palestinian state. The UK only cut its arms shipments by 10%. So there is a feeling, and I think a legitimate feeling that, and of course, we all condemn and are outraged about what happened in
Absolutely.
Australia. I think there's a legitimate feeling that when it's brown bodies, they don't count. It doesn't matter. Where was the outrage before this faux ceasefire? It's not really a ceasefire, it's just a slow motion genocide now. When Israel was killing 250 people a day, including thousands of children, there are various figures, but at least 10,000 children. So
I believe that's as
that's
high as 20,000.
it may be 20 exactly.
Mm.
So nobody actually knows the numbers because thousands upon thousands of people are unaccounted for. As somebody, I worked for 7 years in Gaza, many friends in Gaza, and many people who know people in Gaza, we would hear from people sporadically and then just stop hearing from them. They're no doubt buried under the rubble. A good friend of mine, a great Palestinian novelist, Atu Abu Saif, his sister's family was completely killed. Well, his niece survived. She lost both her legs, but everyone else was killed, and they're not counted among the dead because they're just the whole apartment building came down. Nobody in that apartment building is counted because they didn't recover the bodies.
Mm.
We don't actually know the numbers. People have estimated as high as 100, 160,000. We don't know, but certainly much, much higher. And it's been very frustrating for all of us who have decried this mass slaughter from the beginning. So, what do we expect? There's a terrible frustration in the Muslim world that doesn't in any way condone, and
No.
I don't want to condone any of this violence. To understand is not to condone. We have to understand that this is what the CIA after Afghanistan termed blowback. It's blowback.
Yeah.
And I think all of us who have spent significant time in the Middle East warned that this is inevitable. Especially, we haven't even begun to see Palestinian reprisal attacks. Palestinians, I was in Cairo last spring and with the cartoonist Joe Sacco, we extensively interviewed 29 families from Gaza and we're writing a book about the genocide through the experiences of those 29 families. Every single one of them has been devastated. With counting extended families, cousins, we're talking about dozens of dead. Nobody's escaped. And so there is a very legitimate rage in the Arab world and particularly among Palestinians. And they don't have the mechanisms that Israel has. They don't have an army, a navy, an air force, mechanized units, missiles, holes. They don't have
US
that. So
support.
yeah, and so they will respond in the cruder forms of violence, which is called terrorism, and that is what history has borne that out. It's what uh, Zionist groups did before 1948, including blowing up the King David Hotel. I think there were 91 casualties or something. So that's what we've spawned. This
Yeah.
isn't going to be the end of it. It's horrible. It's frightening, but it would have been totally preventable if Israel was held account to the rule of law, and to the ICJ, to the Geneva Convention, and everything else. But they've not. It's been unmitigated state terror for over 2 years.
But what do you think, though? I mean, I think I heard you on another YouTube video actually describing it as a gift to Netanyahu, this
Yeah,
shooting in
well, of course.
Australia. How do you think that's going to play out? I mean, in one way, it probably does. It's already been weaponized here by sections of the media, of course, and also by the Conservative opposition party, in terms of, Albanese not being strict enough on anti-Semitism, uh, Prime Minister Albanese, that is, and so forth. So, how do you think that will play out from here, and what should the PM and Australia's position be on this?
Well, Australia should have been much more rigorous in terms of opposing the genocide. They should, this idiotic response that they're provide non-lethal parts to the F-35s. Well, the F-35 is quite a sophisticated killing machine. It doesn't have any non-lethal parts. But that Australia's just done what the rest of industrialized nations in the North have done. Um, which is sustain the genocide.
Yeah,
Israel long months and months ago went through all of its stockpiles. It's dependent on all sorts of engines for its entire air fleet is from the United States, but
yeah,
it depends on that constant resupply in order. And this genocide would not have been able to be sustained if these countries had not decided to continue arms shipments, and in the case of the United States, billions of dollars of arms shipments to perpetuate it. So they should have stopped the genocide. I mean, that's not a political position. That is asking them to abide by international law, and that's what's so frightening. The message this
yeah,
delivers to the global South is that uh, it doesn't matter. Law doesn't matter, or maybe it matters for you, but it doesn't matter for us. And that's just not a world we want to live in. I covered the war in Bosnia. I can tell you that when the world breaks down into those Hobbesian nightmares, and the people with the guns rule, it's a very frightening place.
yeah. And so, but why do you think that the media has for so long basically effectively covered this up and misrepresented what's going on in Gaza? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, two reasons. So, I mean, first, as someone who covered the Middle East, and I worked for the New York Times, these large media organizations, above everything else, prize access. So if you're going to hold Israel to account, you're like Al Jazeera, which has been expelled from Israel. You're not going to get a place at the table. You're not going to be invited to the background briefings. You're not going to get your spot on a little dog and pony show where the IDF takes you out for a couple hours in Gaza with with Israeli units, and large organizations like the New York Times. They don't want to get cut off. That's first. So the
Mhm.
second thing is that there's a price to pay. If you challenge that dominant narrative, they're going to come for you, and it's not good for your career. It's not good for your news organization. And most journalists, especially at the level of journalism that I was at the Times, they are consummate careerists. They know very well what's good for their career, and they're not going to do anything to jeopardize it. I mean, I was pushed out of the New York Times because I denounced Bush's call to invade Iraq. I spent months of my life in Iraq. I knew, and 7 years in the Middle East, and I'm an Arabic speaker. I knew this was the debacle that it became. But to say that at the time was to be a pariah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's
and
so
I don't
radical,
think
Chris.
there was no difference in my assessment from any of the other reporters in the Middle East. They just were smart enough to keep their mouth shut. So that's it. That's it. And if you peddle the false narrative that Israel perpetually doles out to the press, you're not going to pay a price. If you challenge that narrative, they're going to come for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, we're no strangers, of course, to that narrative in Australia. And Independent Australia is an outlier, if you like, from the mainstream, what I like to call the mainstream media club here. And of course, your experience with that club was, let's say, less than uh, positive in terms of having been invited out here to speak on behalf. For those who don't know, Chris was invited out to Australia to be a keynote speaker at the National Press Club, and then that invitation was rescinded. Um, and of course, from there, my favourite line, Chris, is where you did say, please have the decency to remove the word press from your club about the National Press Club of Australia. Now, how did that actually transpire? And why do you think that firstly they invite you and then they change their mind?
Well, I can only speculate. So I was invited to give the Edward Said annual lecture at Adelaide, at the University of Adelaide. And
Yes.
then, of course, other events were spawned from that initial invitation, including an address at the National Press Club. I think the National Press Club saw a Pulitzer Prize, American, New York Times, and thought that I was going to regurgitate the usual garbage the mainstream press regurgitates, and that they probably did a little research, including reading a column that I had written called The Betrayal of Palestinian
Yeah.
Journalists, and they decided that absolutely not. And that's my guess. Because we were scheduled, we had a confirmation letter, and they had posted on their site. What was surprising to me was that they lied outright. Now that was very surprising. They should have done that with more finesse. They said that that event had never been confirmed. It had been confirmed. I had the confirmation letter, and we shared it with many media organizations in Australia. And it had somebody had thankfully taken a picture of the
That's right.
website. So they said it wasn't posted on the website. It was completely untrue. So and then I had heard from someone inside that they were reaching out to the Israeli ambassador who has spoken there before to see if he could speak in the name of balance. They'd gotten blowback on a previous event, um, and so yeah, that's what happened. And it's not actually new. I've those of us who speak about Palestinian rights and confront Israel and the Zionist lobby. This is kind of, not uncommon.
No.
What was surprising was that these people were a press club was so utterly mendacious about what happened.
Welcome to Australia, Chris.
I don't know. The United States probably isn't any better. So
I know. So, but there is this, I'm interested in this idea of the balance that you spoke of just then, which is frequently quoted in the media here and is a real bugbear of Independent Australia and our editorial position because there are certain issues, and I say this often, there are certain issues in which there simply are not two sides. For example, and I'm not suggesting war, of course, but things such as, climate change. People say, well, we need to have two sides of climate change. To me, it's a bit like saying there are two sides to gravity. There are not two sides. Climate change is a scientific fact. And, uh, there seems to be this obsession with this faux balance. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
well, because it what it does is protect journalists from powerful entities that would go after them for speaking an unvarnished truth. But it's very cynical because what you're doing is in the name of balance, essentially allowing propagandists, people who peddle lies,
Yeah.
to quote unquote balance out the truth. So, Israel, I covered, I lived in Gaza for months at a time and watched Israel lies like it breathes. And but and the and so the frustrating part for those of us who are on the ground is that the truth, the reality that we sought to impart as journalists to the rest of the world was constantly obscured by Israeli lies. And the journalists at my own newspaper who were peddling those lies, they knew they were lies. I mean, maybe if you're David Marr in Australia, you don't know they're lies. But the people on the ground in Jerusalem, they all know that Israel is lying. And so that's I said in that column that I wrote I wrote a column about being canceled. I can't remember the title of it, of the at the press club, and I talked about the Israeli ambassador. I said, well, yes, he could provide balance if he was honest. He could tell us about Lavender, the AI system that targets Palestinians in Gaza. He could talk about the quotas that up to 10 or 20 civilians can be killed if you're trying to target a Hamas fighter. Up over 100 can be killed if you're trying to target a Hamas commander. I mean, that would be balanced because I'm not on the inside of the IDF. I mean, I know, as a reporter, I can glean stuff on the outside. That would be balanced. That would kind of create the circle. It would broaden our understanding of the truth. But that, of course, is not what he does or Israeli officials do. And so, yeah, balance has become a way to obscure truth, not enhance it. And that has been, one of the frustrating things about dealing with Israel for all the years that I've dealt with them.
And so, do you see a positive here in terms of the worldview shifting somewhat? Certainly in Italy, with where you've just returned from, joined by Greta Thunberg, Francesca Albanese, and Yanis Varoufakis, with the strikes there against this genocide in Gaza. What are your thoughts on that? Are people waking up? Is there a way forward?
Yeah, people have woken up, and the government response has been very heavy-handed censorship and repression. So they've shut down the university encampments. They have expelled. I mean, Columbia University. I live in Princeton, so I was at that encampment a lot, but I was also at Columbia. 100 students were expelled. Professors, Catherine Franke, the constitutional law. I mean, she's quite a eminent figure, taught at the law school for 25 years, thrown out. Rashid Halidi, one of the great historians of the Middle East, because of the new rules, will not even teach a survey course because they would be in violation. It's that whole conflation of criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. I mean, this is and also let's be clear: in these encampments, a rough estimate, 20 or 30% of the students were Jewish. Certainly, the largest ethnic group was probably Jewish. So, yeah, I mean, 77% of registered Democrats want to halt arms shipments to Israel, which is part of the reason Kamala Harris lost, because they were just so tone deaf that they didn't listen to their base. And so that, and then we've had all these. I just testified a few weeks ago at the State House in Trenton, New Jersey, about adopting the IHRA, which is this bill that conflates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. I was there testifying with a Holocaust scholar, an Israeli Holocaust scholar named Raz Siegel, a very courageous and brilliant Holocaust scholar. And our when we were trying to speak, the chairman muted our microphones, so no one could hear us. So there we
Wow.
were attempting to argue that this bill would shut down free speech while they were shutting down free speech. So, yeah, that's the response. I think most people, I mean, in I don't know Australia, but certainly within the United States, And this is, you've seen it even on the right, which is why figures like Charlie Kirk, this very repugnant, racist, homophobic, Islamophobic, who's now been deified by the Trump administration, but even he had to shift because young people, even young Republicans, are not buying this anymore. I mean,
Mm,
how could you? It's 2 years of live streamed horror. So yeah, but the response of the state and the response of uh, media organizations. I mean, we've seen in the United States, Larry Ellison, one of the richest people in the United States, has bought up CBS. He's trying to buy TikTok. He's probably going to get it, CNN. And their response is just wholesale censorship. They've appointed this really repugnant, irresponsible, and dishonest figure, Bari Weiss, to run CBS News. I mean, the only good thing is that she's so incompetent, it isn't going to work. But yeah, it's censorship.
yeah.
It's really because they don't have any other answer. They're at this point. So yeah, I think there's been a huge, huge shift, and that frightens Israel, and it frightens the Zionists or the Israel lobby, and it frightens those in power who, I mean, first of all, the weapons manufacturers who've made a killing off the war and or the
Mm.
genocide in Gaza in the same way they've made a killing off of Ukraine. So yeah, there are powerful entities that find this threatening.
And, given that our job, as you've said many times, and we say frequently as well, is as journalists to report the truth, with these changes, with these very wealthy people buying out all our uh, not only media organizations, but social media organizations, how are people going to be able to get the message out and you know, and actually report the truth?
Right. So it doesn't work. I mean, what they're trying to do doesn't work. And the best example is Turkey. I used to spend a lot of time in Turkey. So Erdogan destroyed the Turkish press, by the way, was one of the most vigorous and respected press in, let's call it the Muslim world. Turkey's not
Mhm.
technically, I think, in the Middle East, but
No.
is Hurriyet. I mean, these were amazing press organizations. I mean, these journalists were really, really good, and Erdogan destroyed it. Well, nobody reads Hurriyet anymore.
Yeah.
They'll all like gravitate to podcasts by Turkish journalists who are living in exile in Germany. So it isn't going to work. I mean, it is the idea that they are going to be able to disseminate these kinds of falsehoods is a pipe dream. Um, if they shut down TikTok, people will find other ways to get information. That was true in the old Soviet Union, where they would send out mimeographed newsletters. That's, I think, how Solzhenitsyn first disseminated parts of Gulag Archipelago. These people have no credibility left. So they can buy up all these media organizations, do everything they want, but people are going to walk away.
They're going to listen to people like us, hopefully.
Yeah, they're going to listen to people who are attempting to actually grapple with the truth rather than sell propaganda.
And so, on that, I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Australia's passed a new legislation actually covering social media for those under 16. It is now illegal for people under 16 to access social media. Wh- how do you think that's going to play out?
Well, I have kind of conflicted emotions about it because
Me
as a
too.
somebody who teaches, well, yeah, I always find that I think all of us who've taught for a long time are finding that kind of addiction to social media has destroyed attention spans, even at elite universities,
Yeah.
and made it hard for people to concentrate and read. Because as soon as you get on social media, you stop reading. So there's that aspect of it. I mean, I fear a post-literate culture, and with AI, a culture that no longer knows how to write. And when you don't know how to write, you don't know how to organize your thoughts. You don't know how to think clearly. So there's that aspect. On the other hand, of course,
There's a
the
censorship aspect.
yeah, the
Yeah.
idea that you can stop people from seeing the horror in Gaza or accessing information that challenges whatever the power elites want you to believe, I mean, that element is there without question, and I'm probably about to see TikTok seized by Ellison and Zionists, but I don't think it ultimately works. I think people, even if they don't know exactly what's happening, they do know they're being lied to.
Right, right. Well, that's a very positive, very positive way to look at it, and I really appreciate that because yes, like you, I am conflicted. You know, I have they're grown children now, but the whole social media landscape has been troubling for a long time, and also the way in which it's controlled and the way in which the algorithms, I guess, force feed information, funnel information in a certain way to people, and shadow ban independent news media organizations. All of those things are very troubling. However, the idea that we can just go, right, that's it, you're not no longer able to access information, I find that also quite repugnant and difficult to grapple with. So I think this idea that people know they're being lied to, even if they don't actually know the full circumstances behind um, events and so forth. But we'll try and seek out the truth. I find that very, very comforting in a way. So, yeah, thank you, Chris. And so, lastly, I guess, how do you feel? As journalists, we need to move forward from here. How do we actually navigate the difficulties with AI, and chat GPT kind of dominating people's Google searches, the difficulty in accessing social media and being made available for people. Um, what should we be doing to actually to get to the truth, which is our job? It's our one job.
Well,
We've got one job.
yeah, the problem is these media platforms are owned by these large corporations, Meta and others, that are completely tied to the national security state. And of course, I'm a victim of that. Uh, I had a show on RT America. It wasn't on Russia, it was on the United States. And as soon as they shut RT down, YouTube disappeared all 6 years of my show. So the entities that we use to essentially reach an audience are entities that are controlled by people who are antagonistic to the message that we're trying to send. And that is a big, big problem, something actually Julian Assange predicted and wrote about in his
Yep,
book, Cypherpunks. I'm a friend of Julian's. And let me just, again, hold him up as I did when I was in Australia,
absolutely.
along with John Pilger. I think I said you produced some of the best journalists of our era and some of the worst. I was actually thinking of Murdoch, but we can
Yeah,
include
yeah.
David Marr
Do
too.
we really call him a journalist,
No, he's
Murdoch?
not a journalist. He's
No.
what we call a throat.
Yeah,
Somebody who sits in front of a microphone and
yeah.
stares at his own reflection in essence. I told him that when I walked out. I mean the first thing I said to him was that you're a piece of shit, and the second thing I said, in our business we call you a throat,
Right.
which I have very no respect for them at all.
I
Yeah,
was
I
referring to
mean,
Murdoch, by the way, but yeah, sure.
yeah, we have to fight the battles, but people know when you are attempting to be honest. I mean, people sense that, people understand that. I mean, I was a few months ago standing in line for a train at the Washington Union Station in Washington, D.C. And the woman behind me said, "Oh, I know who you are, and I respect what you do, and I voted for Trump." And I thought, but at least she knows I'm trying to be honest. I mean, I don't, so I loathe Trump, of course, but I thought, at least she knows I'm not trying to spin her.
Yes, and that's a very interesting point. But this whole, I guess Trump is the elephant in the room for us in many ways because there's no escaping him, even though he's not the president of Australia, but he influences the free world, as we like to refer to it, and We find it quite astounding that he would be returned. And I know it's too late to
Uh,
kind of go over that now,
yeah,
but
that's a long discussion, but it really comes from the orchestration of social inequality, massive social inequality, and a system that funnels wealth upwards into the hands of a billionaire class, Jeff Bezos and
yep,
others, Palantir and all these figures.
yeah, and Musk
And so
and Zuckerberg and
people know they've been betrayed, and they've been betrayed by both the quote unquote liberal class, the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party. And so Trump is worse, but he's people are desperate. He expresses a kind of rage and call for vengeance. Of course, what he does, like all demagogues, is focus that vengeance on the vulnerable, on Muslims, on undocumented people, etc., who are not the people who created the mess. But that's what demagogues or authoritarian states always do.
yeah,
But Trump is not the disease; he's the symptom.
yep,
And it's the Obamas and the Bidens and the Clintons and the Bushes that essentially destroyed our democracy piece by piece. Sheldon Wolin, the great political philosopher, calls it a corporate coup d'etat in slow motion. No, that's actually John Ralston Saul, sorry, the Canadian philosopher. But yeah, that's right. That's what happened. And so people are grasping and people are desperate. People say, they're suffering. I mean, 60% of the people in the United States don't have $400 for an emergency bill. Well, that when societies break
60%,
down like that, you
60%.
yeah, 60% of the United States is living paycheck to pay, really struggling. And we don't have universal health care. Over half of 500,000 people a year who have health insurance go bankrupt. I mean, the whole system is so predatory, so mercenary. Student debt, personal debt, suppression of wages. I mean, the United States is a very cruel, cruel place. Not to mention the fact that we have mass shootings almost on a daily basis. We just had one at Brown University.
Yeah.
So it's and that's what happens. I mean, I saw it in the former Yugoslavia when the economic collapse of Yugoslavia and hyperinflation led to the rise of these, figures like Radovan Karadzic and Slobodan Milosevic and Franjo Tudjman and others. Or you go back to Weimar. I mean, this is what happens.
Go
And
back to
Trump is,
Germany. Yeah.
hmm? Yeah,
And we can go back to Germany.
and Trump is just, you know, he embodies he embodies the disease. He personally embodies the diseased society itself. He is an expression of a deeply diseased society.
Chris, it's been such a eye-opening and amazing time having you here today. I'd like to do it again, hopefully, in a little while. But do you have any closing thoughts before we go?
No, just don't. My warning to Australia is, don't let the United States turn you into a colony because that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
You don't want to get sucked into our military adventurism, probably against China. That's a really, really bad idea for
Yeah.
us and for Australia.
Yeah, and I think, in many ways, of course, we identify because we started out as a colony, with that kind of, having this big brother looking out for us. And I think that is a huge issue and one of the things that we rail against here, trying to actually have an independent nation, independent of the monarchy and of the US military machine. But anyway, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it and all your insights into the world today. A little bit bleak, but it is our job to talk about it, isn't
Yeah. Thanks,
it?
Michelle.
Thank you.